The original Vorinclex was famously blasted on game nights as being, and I quote, a jerk card for jerks. We each try to hide the jerk within us, confine it to a jail, and let it out into the prison yard to stretch its legs only when no one is watching. Sometimes we're successful, and sometimes we're not. My name is Ryan. Welcome to the Uncommon Commander. A new Vorinclex was announced recently and is being printed into the Kaldheim set for Magic the Gathering. This new Vorinclex is powerful, yes, but it is decidedly less of a jerk card for jerks, almost like he's hiding his inner jerk. Today, I want to celebrate that jerk, and celebrate the inner jerk in all of us. We wouldn't be who we are without that nefarious villain within, so without further ado, I present to you this deck tech commanded by Vorinclex, Monstrous Raider. This big boy is a 6-mana legendary creature, Phyrexian Praetor, with a 6/6 body, and the keywords Trample and Haste. It also has, if you would put one or more counters on a permanent or player, put twice that many of each of those kinds of counters on that permanent or player instead. And if an opponent will put one or more counters on a permanent or player, they put half that many of each of those kinds of counters on that permanent or player instead, rounded down. This means that if you hit someone with a single infect damage, you'll hit them for 2 infect damage instead. It also means that if somebody hits you with a single infect damage, it'll get halved to 0.5 and then rounded down to 0. It also means that your planeswalkers are going to come out with twice as many loyalty counters as normal, and that their plus abilities will increase their loyalty twice as quickly. It means the exact opposite for opposing planeswalkers, meaning that if Vorinclex is on the battlefield and your opponent casts Jace Cunning Castaway, he'll come down with 1 loyalty counter, and when his +1 ability is activated, he'll gain no loyalty counters from it. Due to this effect, opposing sagas also get paused until Vorinclex is no longer in play. It also pauses your opposition's cumulative upkeeps. This can be good or bad depending on the card. Obviously, it doubles the speed of any of these that you control. With today's tech, let's focus on what Vorinclex's abilities can do for us. As mentioned, when he's in play, Infect and Poison counters we hand out are doubled, so you know we're running Infect. And our Planeswalkers can all be ulted as soon as they're cast, so you know we're going Superfriends. Though it isn't the focus of this deck, we also do have some +1/+1 counter cards, and those will double as well. I've avoided cards like Doubling Season, since those don't really synergize well with Infect and cost a ton of actual cash money. Due to the amount of land ramp needed to cast Vorinclex and our high CMC planeswalkers as early as possible, I've also decided to include a small landfall package to capitalize on the extra lands entering play. Now let's get rolling and kill some blue mages. Oh, but before moving on, I would like to mention that I would be lying if I said this was a completely original deck idea. I was in the process of building an Infect deck already when I noticed Vorinclex, and shortly thereafter a video by the professor of Tolarian Community College fame, and I decided to marry his 2 ideas, Superfriends and Infect, which allows us to abuse Vorinclex to the maximum degree. By the way, I recommend watching the professor's Vorinclex video, and I've linked it below in the video description. Tolarian Community College was one of the first channels I found on YouTube for MTG, and his product videos, especially those regarding sleeves, cases, and pre-constructed decks, have been super helpful to me as a consumer. I'm sure anybody who's found my channel already knows about his, but in case you didn't already know about it, go check him out. Also, today's deck tech is $150 without the commander. I don't know how much Vorinclex is going to end up costing once he's actually released. I know the price will drop, I just don't know by how much, so we're doing this without factoring in his price at all. Okay, now for real, let's go kill some blue mages. To get Vorinclex going as quickly as possible, we're going to ramp fairly hard. Not quite the hardest I've ever ramped, but pretty hard. For ramp, we have a bunch of sorceries: Edge of Autumn, Rampant Growth, Beneath the Sands, Cultivate, Kodama's Reach, Map the Wastes, Nissa's Pilgrimage, and Sky Shroud Claim. As you can tell, we are land ramping very hard here. If you face a lot of land destruction, you may want to swap some land ramp out for some mana rocks. I recommend ones that use counters like Everflowing Chalice and Astral Cornucopia, or the indestructible ones like Darksteel Ingot and Skyclave Relic, because we're going to be blowing up artifacts, sometimes including our own. But wait, there's more. We have permanent base ramp in Diligent Farmhand, Font of Fertility, Plague Mirror, which is also our first Infect card, Sakura Tribe Elder, Fertilid, which actually comes out as a 3-mana 4/4 with Vorinclex in play, Spring Bloom Druid, and Wood Elves. Again, this is mostly land ramp, so if you want to diversify, just remove some of this and put a couple of mana rocks in, and that'll do the trick. It may be that we'll want to buy time before making everyone hate us. These removal spells can help with that. They can also be cast later to remove troublesome things, and many would argue that's actually the smarter use for them. Use them as you want, though. For spot removal of artifacts and enchantments, we have Return to Nature, Wilt, Broken Wings, Reclamation Sage, and Wickerbuff Elder. Return to Nature can also exile a card from a graveyard, and Broken Wings can help deal with a creature of the variety that we struggle with the most, flying. Viridian Corruptor will give your game plan away by being an Infect creature, and only removes artifacts. Speaking of giving your game plan away, Pistis Strike will both give our game plan away and telegraph one of the biggest weaknesses of the deck. It's great! We also have Beast Within, which will remove any permanent, but has the downside of giving your opponents a creature. We do have 3 board wipes. Those are Hurricane, Bane of Progress, and Whiptongue Hydra. Hurricane can kill you, so be careful with it, but it can also be a closer. The other 2 synergize extremely well with our commander, making them pretty scary the turn after you wipe with them. Pretty much, no matter what you play when you're done ramping, you're going to be the archenemy. I'm sorry, but that's a fact. People hate Planeswalkers ulting, they hate Infect, and Vorinclex is an alternate version of Doubling Season attached to a 6/6 trample hasted body in the command zone. Why wait to draw hate? Let's begin with Infect. We're not running as many Infect creatures as you might imagine. I've already mentioned Plaguemere. Some others here that are specifically here for their Infect keyword are Blight Mamba, Tangle Angler, Phyrexian Juggernaut, and Phyrexian Swarmalord. Blight Mamba and Tangle Angler are here largely to be blockers, while Phyrexian Juggernaut is a one-shot kill with Vorinclex on the board, and Phyrexian Swarmalord can potentially overwhelm opposing armies with small Infect creatures. Knowing that these may not quite get you to the Infect kill, we're also running some Proliferate, which might as well read Proliferate, then Proliferate again with Vorinclex in play. These are Pollenbright Druid, and the Proliferate engines, Evolution Sage, and Contagion Engine, which actually does read Proliferate, then Proliferate again. So with that, you'll actually proliferate 4 times when Vorinclex is on the board. Yikes. With all that land ramp earlier, we do want to do more than just use it. We want to abuse it. I don't have many slots to put landfall shenanigans in, but I did pick a few of the better payoff cards for this deck. Those are Territorial Scythecat, Oran Reef Hydra, Rampaging Baloths, and Avenger of Zendikar, who is significantly cheaper than it used to be, so buy it while it's quote-unquote cheap. Okay, let's quit putzing around with all these cute little things the deck can do and get into the most powerful things it can do. This is our card advantage section, and it's loaded with expensive spells, most of which are Planeswalkers. In order of CMC from lowest to greatest are Generous Patron, which synergizes nicely with our Infect creatures, Garruk Unleashed, Freyalise Llanowar's Fury, Nissa Vital Force, Return of the Wildspeaker, which isn't the Planeswalker, it just depicts one, Vivian Reed, who will do her level best to make sure that you have a spell to cast even without a hand, Vivian Monster's Advocate, Garruk Caller of Beasts, and Vivian Nature's Avenger. I almost forgot to mention Vivian Monster's Advocate can also hand out Vigilance, Reach, and Trample counters, which can be super handy in this deck. And now I think you'll notice that some of these do just draw you cards, while some reveal cards and then put them into your hand, and some of them just cheat creatures out of your library when you cast another creature. All of them can be ulted immediately with Vorinclex in play though. Many of the cards you've seen can win the game off of just pure value, and of course there are the Infect cards. To really push for that win though, we have these next 3. First up is Beastmaster Ascension, which will only require us to attack with 4 creatures to get to 7 counters thanks to Vorinclex. This is super useful with our Infect creatures, as they'll turn into 1 or 2-shot creatures all on their own. Garruk Primal Hunter will be able to ult immediately thanks to Vorinclex, and all that land ramp you did earlier will pay off in the form of 6/6 worms for each land you control. Finally, Strata Sith is a card that lets us transition from Infect and Superfriends into Voltron, with just 1 card. If you swing with Vorinclex as soon as you can get Strata Sith on him, he'll be somewhere in the ballpark of a 14/14 Trampler with haste, somewhere between turns 5 and 8, depending on how well your start went. Obviously, people are going to just hate all of this. They're going to see Vorinclex in the command zone and realize he's awesome. Then they're going to see you casting Infect creatures, and they're going to start focusing on you. And then they're going to see the Planeswalkers shoot out of your hand, and you'll be public enemy number 1. Because of all this, you need to be able to protect your board, and especially Vorinclex. For this, we have 6 protection cards, and depending on your meta, you may even want more. The ones in this deck are the single target Withstand Death, the anti-counter spell and spot removal card Autumn's Veil, and the cards that protect the entire board, Glaring Spotlight, Heroic Intervention, Rapid Vigor, and Asceticism. If you do decide that you want more protection than this, there are a couple of favorites of mine in Aspect of the Mongoose and Inspiring Call, but there are also plenty of other spells available to help too. Protection abilities are plentiful in green. A few cards that could have gone into other categories but are here primarily to help us swat flying creatures out of the air are Aquastrand Spider, Blight Widow, and Vivien, Champion of the Wilds. Aquastrand Spider goes one further and helps other creatures also block flying creatures, while Blight Widow can double as a creature to give your opponents a couple of poison counters if they're open to the attack. Vivien of the Wilds doesn't just give a creature vigilance and reach, she also lets us cast creatures at flash speed and works as a source of card advantage. Nice! A card that enables most of our deck to go off quickly is Crashing Drawbridge. We're running 27 creatures, so this will see some use. I wanted to keep lots of forests in this deck to synergize with Stratasith and a secret card that is going to be found in our final countdown segment today, so I stayed fairly tame with our non-basics today. To start with, we have the utility lands, Karn's Bastion, Mosswort Bridge, Nesting Grounds, Opal Palace, Blighted Woodland, and Myriad Landscape. Nesting Grounds notably doesn't just move +1/+1 counters around, but all kinds of counters. Moving a counter means removing it and then putting it somewhere else, so that counter will double when you use Nesting Grounds on it. Opal Palace is here largely as a deterrent to people removing Vorinclex too many times. With all our ramp, we should be able to recast him a couple of times and he'll come back bigger and bigger each time. Blighted Woodland and Myriad Landscape will let us get more landfall triggers. 2 other utility lands that we have are Tangled Florahedron and Colony Ambush. The Florahedron helps us ramp, and Colony Ambush acts as removal. They both come down as green tap lands on their backsides. Finally, our basic lands are 27 forests and 0 snow-covered forests. Alright, you green goblins. It's the segment you've all been waiting for, the segment in which I hand select 5 cards to talk about, not always because they're the best cards in the deck, but more so because I like talking about them. This segment is called The Final Countdown! And we're going to get straight into it today. At number 5, we have a card that can make our small +1/+1 counter sub-theme turn into a win condition. It's the Ozolith. And never mind that it doesn't specify +1/+1 counters. Remember Vivien Monster's Advocate? Yeah, we get to save up all those Vigilance, Trample, and Reach counters too. Nobody hates a Blight Mamba with 9 +1/+1 counters and a Trample counter on it, do they? Nah. So there is one more card that turns Vorinclex into a Voltron, but this one is less about commander damage and more about Infect. At number 4, we have Grafted Exoskeleton. And this thing is a one-shot kill on Vorinclex, but you can honestly give it to any of the multitude of big creatures that this deck produces, and they'll suddenly be terrifying. If you want to cut a card, don't cut this one. Okay, so at number 3, we have a sorcery that costs 7 mana and doesn't just win you the game. At least, not in most decks. Planewide Celebration has 4 modes, and you get to select from them 4 times, and you can pick the same option more than once. In this case, the life gain and creation of citizens is mostly something we'll do only when really desperate. The recursion part of it is something we'll use when we need to get things back from our graveyard that were removed, but the thing that we really want to focus on here is Proliferate. As long as Vorinclex is out and you've gotten just 2 poison counters on someone, choosing Proliferate 4 times will be enough to kill them. Spreading poison counters out between friends is no longer a mistake, instead it's something to be celebrated. Okay, at number 2, we have the card that really broke the bank on this deck. It's colorless, it's a planeswalker, and it's a dragon. That's right, it's Ugin, the Spirit Dragon. Ugin can work as spot removal or as a board wipe, but he's in here specifically because of his ult. He can use it right away if you cast him with Vorinclex in play, and very swiftly you'll understand why this card costs $20. If you're on a budget that's stricter than mine, go ahead and cut him. But if you're not, enjoy the insane card advantage and instant board presence. And now we're down to number 1. I won't lie and say number 1 is better than Ugin the Spirit Dragon, but I will tell the truth and tell you that it can be better than Ugin the Spirit Dragon with the right setup. At number 1, we have Nissa, who shakes the world. We're gonna ult her right away, and gosh, I really hope we have Avenger of Zendikar, Rampaging Baloths, or some crap like that out, because if we do, our battlefield is getting nuts. If that fails, you have Garruk Primal Hunter that will just create 27 6/6 worms to overwhelm your opponents with. And if that fails, just load up +1/+1 counters onto a land. Within 2 turns you'll be swinging with a 12/12 indestructible land creature. And if that fails, well, at least you won't have to worry about mana ever again. So, what did we learn today? We learned that you're never going to win with this deck because everyone will think you're a complete and utter jerk. And on that note, I think it's time to ask you to click the like button if you enjoyed today's video, and click subscribe if you haven't already so you can hear this garbage again in the future. I've got an older commander coming out with even more Infect involved, and I've been finding myself completely swept up by building Keldheim commanders, so be sure to tune into those future deck texts as I post them up and prepare yourself for the winter. Thanks everyone, and I'll see you next time.